So like you have to have all your ducks in a row at all times, like, because it's like, because people are going to try to attack you for whether you're too talented or you're too attractive or you're too smart or you're too sharp and on the ball, or people are going to seek you out because they know that you have a good sense of whatever. And I'm sure you have gone through this a lot.
Oh, yeah. With every agency, and I've never been public with this, with every agency that I have either run or owned, there's been a conspiracy to have me fired.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Like, I relate to this. Every not in Chicago. This did not happen in Chicago, ironically. But when I started in the film industry, when I started doing independent films, I had the freedom and the respect and whatever. And yet here I was young, just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
When I got here to LA, very different story. Every time I became a personal to somebody or I was running a show, man, watch your back. It was like a victim's table. Somebody was out to get you. And I don't understand it. I don't understand when you're actually given opportunities of employment, why are you trying to take out the person who brought you in? I mean, what is that?
Do you remember in the movie Princess Bride? Inconceivable.
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 Like, it is inconceivable. It's
mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. I mean, it is Shakespeare repetitive. It's like Shakespeare on like,
thank you, steroids.
Yeah. And I don't get it. I mean, it's interesting. So you've gone through that every time.
Every single agency. And I'm the common denominator.
I always say, don't ever make me laugh when I'm drinking because I'll give a spit take. Excuse me, but no, I hear that. What does courage mean? Courage means, to me, having the willingness to step into something uncomfortable or taking a stand for something or someone and doing something that maybe, nobody else around you will do, but you just have this burning desire to have to do because your soul is telling you. Well, what I love about Marie Anderson, whom I aligned with years ago in the fashion industry, is that against all odds, she is super courageous. She's courageous in a way that has leadership qualities, is courageous in a way that can make you feel like an outsider, but she's courageous in a way that she's still standing, she's still persevering, she's still successful, and she's doing it in her own way. And what I love about Marie and sharing her with the world is she has had her finger on the pulse in so many ways that I look forward to you joining us, being a part of this conversation, my second round of conversing with Marie. And I look forward to how, even though this conversation took place a couple of months ago, how apropos and poignant it is right now. So much love. Look forward to you listening. Sit down, grab your cup of tea, grab your cannoli. Don't forget your s'mores. Join us around the campfire. I look forward to hearing what you think. Bye for now. Hey, Marie.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
You can see me now.
I can see you now. Yeah. Hi. Thanks for having another Sunday morning with me.
My pleasure.
How are you?
I'm good. I don't know if you saw on social media that last Saturday I got my 2nd degree black belt.
Yes, I did.
Very fancy.
Very fancy and very appropriate, I think, for our conversation.
Dude, right?
Dude, 100%. You know, it's also interesting. There was a lot of, I don't have all the news clippings from things. News clippings listen to me like so OG. But one of the things I found really fascinating, because I'd love to talk about your black belt, but one of the things I found fascinating was there were more arrests of billionaires for the conversation that we had been discussing regarding around the fraternal movement of the Jeffrey Epstein kind of sourcing. And I also thought it was interesting that Emily Ratajkowski was also coming out with her book and conversations about her experiences that she had from the past, right, you know, regarding blurred lines with Robin Thicke. And I just thought the timing of our conversation was quite something, considering that you and I were talking about the late 80s. And you know, I don't think that you and I were consciously actively involved with the Me Too. I mean, I actually have never really spoken about the Me Too movement. I mean, I never talked about things that, I mean, I was never quote unquote violated, but I definitely was approached by a lot of number one leading men, you know, in my day. I mean, I'm still in my day, but I mean, early on. Yeah. But I never felt like I couldn't handle myself and handle the situation. But I thought the timing of here we've had about a month in the process of our original conversation, and now here all this other information starts coming out.
Y'all, finally,
right? Yeah.
So yeah, I had started speaking out about all this before the official Me Too movement. I started talking about it in 1990. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thankfully, eventually Michael Gross, the New York journalist, would start having that conversation too, which would lead up to him writing his book, Model, The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. And he was my first advocate to acknowledge that, yes, this is going on. You're not alone, Marie. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell everybody about so many other people like John Casablancas, Gerald Marie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so finally the Me Too movement is like, okay, great, things are starting to happen, but not a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And then thankfully Sarah Ziff from the Model, well, she created the Model Alliance out of New York as a result of the abuse that she had experienced in the mm-hmm. business, financial abuse, verbal abuse, you name it. So anyway, the point is that I just kept hoping, like, okay, now things are going to change. Now things are going to change. Hope, hope, hope. And sadly not, like R. Kelly is a perfect example, right? Years.
But this brings me to this point. How do you feel about not being believed and heard?
That's an excellent question. I'm trying to be transparent and to ask myself, how did I feel? Because it's definitely very triggering for me. It's infuriating for me because as a child, I was experiencing inappropriate things and was told I was a liar. Don't be a tattletale, or, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting theme in my life. And I didn't even think about it till you just asked that question.
Well, the thing about that is that you're not alone. You're not alone. And this doesn't have to do with any particular subject. If you're a seer, or you're a person who is a pioneer, or if you're a person who's super sensitive to your environment, or you're somebody who is forthright in truth, not to be confrontational, not to be pulling back the curtain, not to even say that that's the job that you were expecting to take upon yourself, but then to be considered an outsider and to pay a price for that.
It's very
very painful. And the stories that could be told of those individuals, including the two of us, I don't think that we're outsiders, but I think that there have been definitely moments in our life where we probably have felt like, how in God's name did this happen? I'm a good person. I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm dedicated, I'm committed, I'm focused. I care for others. I bring people up. I raise people up. I do all the right things. And this is the price you pay because of being the person who happened to be in the right place at the right time and witness such and such and such. Mm-hmm. And you know that in your moral compass, this is not kosher. And so you're the one that is willing to speak the truth, mm-hmm. while others, are more willing to stay in the shallow end.
100%.
That to me is something that I definitely, when you use the word trigger, I find that it is a word that it is a thing that triggers me. It triggers me wherever I find that I go. Not intentionally, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not like we intentionally walk into those situations, but we're like the canary in the mine, or the litmus test. It's like, nope, this is not right. Time to go now. Or you hear a story and you're like, nope, that was inappropriate. Yeah, thank you for saying I'm not alone. It wasn't until Michael Gross wrote his book did I understand that I wasn't alone, because as I started speaking out in essentially 1990 about the reason that I quit Elite, I was becoming an outsider and people were urging me to shut up. And I was trying to talk to reporters here in Chicago to make them aware. And they're like, shh. Yeah, we don't talk about things like that. Like, that's not even an issue, Marie. Please don't bother me again, essentially was what I was being told. And so then all the more reason for Michael Gross out of New York to be interested in not only my story, but everybody's story, and try to live in a solution. And if I understand correctly, with Michael's book, his life was threatened because of
I remember seeing that in the documentary. Well, and you're talking about protecting, you're talking about now it's interesting. Here would be, journalists who you would think would be like salacious for this information to go, oh my God, this is like, this is Pulitzer Prize winning stuff, potentially, right?
Right.
To actually do that anthropological dig. But then like my intuitive self says, well, what was it that they were afraid of what, missing out on some party at the Playboy Mansion? Yeah. Exactly. Or some gathering that they've been benefiting from, and that they don't want to cut off their right hand to all their other connections. I mean, because that's what my gut tells me. Now, whether that's valid or not, I don't know, because I don't know these people, but that would be my sense of why. And look, nobody I don't think nobody wants to go through or be the one who's the seer or the truth seeker, to be disconnected from the core of what it is that they love and are passionate about. That's the irony. If anything, you're the sculptor trying to create the sculpture to the finest degree. And what I know of you, Marie, going not backwards, but from the starting point of our connection, you were the epitome of that. And I know in my eyes, having come from the way I was developed, I wanted to be that in your eyes. As the person who, was hopefully going to be representing me or putting me out there into the world and making me the better artist, so I could go and get the clients that I felt I deserved to have or be running with. And it's interesting because I was listening to something the other day about how it's not about the talent, it's about how is it put? It's basically about drawing attention to yourself. That will call out like how you leverage yourself and how you make money. And there's a part of me that thinks, God, man, that just doesn't sit right with me. And yet a lot of people today are making a lot of money just that way, having nothing to do with their talent.
Yeah.
Have just to do with the fact that they're out there just enough. And listen, the irony to that is doing this platform, doing the things that, I'm working on doing, just being my truth, ironically, internally makes me sometimes feel like it makes other people uncomfortable because Felicia's doing things that, what is she doing now kind of thing. Well, she doesn't need this because she's doing that. No, nobody knows what any of us are doing. That's the truth. Nobody knows how you sit in your, your home and how you may hurt from past hurts, or feel like if I didn't say this, how much further along would I be, or not. But I'm just saying, like, we as human beings are delicate flowers.
True. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, no amount of money and no amount of fucking people over pays off.
I'd agree with you to a certain point, because I think the payoff is relative to the individual and what they see as the payoff.
Well, sure. I mean,
right?
if you're running with the same kind of attitude, if that's your group, then that's what you do and that's how you run. I get that. I get that it's the moral compass of who the individual is or individuals are.
Do you follow Simon Sinek, the business guru, at all? I love him. Because essentially many years ago, he shared his business philosophy because he coaches businesses. And he said, start with why. Every business should start with why.
They all do. What's your why?
And if you go from the core of make money, then at the end of the day, your company is a soulless company, because that's the only thing it's doing is making money. But I liked his analogy with Apple, regardless of politics and how anybody feels about how that all started. But the point being is that it was my understanding from the lecture that the whole idea of personal computers wasn't to make money. It was to change people's lives. And so that's kind of the same concept with me. Like, if I start to get really discouraged and I just want to give up because I have been so severely ostracized by the modeling business, and there's been just painful consequences according to that, I have to keep reminding myself, start with why. Let's go back, Marie. And it's like, what is your goal? And I think we kind of touched upon this last time, but essentially for me, my goal is to hopefully prevent suicide. That's the whole kind of really at the core, because if you can prevent suicide, or you can hopefully prevent suicide by preventing trauma, because a lot of suicides are the side effect of that trauma, whether, physical trauma, emotional trauma. Like recently, I was just reading in this article about how this very young child, I think that she was like 8 or 9, and she has Asperger's, and she committed suicide because the bullying at school. And that's what I mean. Like, that is obviously very traumatic. It's not sexual trauma, but it is still emotional trauma. And how do the adults around them allow that to happen? Why is it okay for children to be that abusive? I know these are all rhetorical questions.
No. But I think that's all learned by the environment that they're raised in.
Exactly.
Because babies don't come out bullies. They learn how to bully. They learn how to mistreat one another through the environments that they're surrounded by.
And if you go back to the whole elite logo, did we talk about this last time?
No.
Oh, have you seen that article, Casablancas, the man who loved women? Oh, you need to watch it, because I mean, it's not a happy thing to watch, but it's John talking about how he became John and how elite evolved. And he bragged about his logo being specifically designed to look like an erect penis and balls.
Well, then he must have been following the Camel cigarette logo, just having a penis within the Camel situation.
Oh, I don't think I knew about that. And my daddy used to grow camels.
Yeah, supposedly there was some sort of subliminal imagery.
This is the first I've ever heard of it. Leave it to you to educate me.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I mean, I'd love to see what John Casablancas was when he was a child, and if he felt less than, and this was his form of becoming more than, and empowerment. Because anybody in my mind who needs that kind of power and needs that kind of recognition, especially over a group of people, i.e. women, generally came from a place of less than. And now I'm going to figure out, and you can think about all the people in that kind of community that he ran with, or that I assimilate with him, and I will leave names out. But any male individual, and we both discuss how much we love men, so this is not anti.
Oh, no, quite the contrary.
This is because there's nothing better than an amazing human being that comes through the male species, but that kind of a human being is different than the kind of individual we're referencing to right now. A real man does not take advantage of. A real man does not use his power over. A real man is somebody who's caring and a listener and a mentor, and grows that child or that flower or whatever that he's invested in, and loves on that without crossing boundaries, and is a leader in that way, and hopefully mentors others to do the same. The kind of individuals we're talking about are people who do take their power and abuse it. And it's interesting because we've been going through this pandemic, obviously, for the last almost, certainly 20 months now. And this is just a perfect example of it. I just happened to have seen CBS Sunday Morning this morning, which I liked to engage with or watch if I can. And they were talking about Dr. Fauci. And Dr. Fauci is a perfect example of maybe, he didn't do the best things during the early 80s, during the AIDS movement, and, all that stuff. But now what he's been trying to do, and it's interesting because this goes back to abuse of power. Whether people believe this or not, I believe this. I believe that there was an abuse of power. I believe that the pandemic, certainly starting in our own country, could have been handled better from a science perspective, had we been led appropriately and not told that this was just going to go away like magic and this is just, this is a one case kind of situation. I mean, who are you? Like, you might as well just say, just all walk into that oven and you'll all be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what the guy was saying in a very subliminal way, talking about abuse of power. Talk about just so misleading. So, I mean, I think coming up in the modeling agency, I know that was just such an extreme statement, but my point is, and Fauci said it, and I've said it, and people look at me, and this goes back to all the things, being somebody who speaks the truth. Mm-hmm. Look, I mean, this could make somebody cry make me cry. Like, do you think I get off on being somebody who like has the finger on a pulse?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
it's hard. If I were a surgeon, I'd be like, oh my God, she's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
But being a person who the surgery comes out through the mouth of words, that's a different dynamic. And I find that, you're either super popular or you're not.
Uh-huh.
So like you have to have all your ducks in a row at all times, like, because people are going to try to attack you for whether you're too talented or you're too attractive or you're too smart or you're too sharp and on the ball, or people are going to seek you out because they know that you have a good sense of whatever. And I'm sure you have gone through this a lot.
Oh, yeah. With every agency, and I've never been public with this, with every agency that I have either run or owned, there's been a conspiracy to have me fired.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Like, I relate to this. Every not in Chicago. This did not happen in Chicago, ironically. But when I started in the film industry, when I started doing independent films, I had the freedom and the respect and whatever. And yet here I was young, just kind of figuring it out. Yeah. When I got here to LA, very different story. Every time I became a personal to somebody or I was running a show, man, watch your back. It was like our victim's table. Somebody was out to get you. And I don't understand it. I don't understand when you're actually given opportunities of employment. Mm-hmm. Why are you trying to take out the person who brought you in? I mean, what is that?
Do you remember in the movie Princess Bride? Inconceivable.
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 Like, it is inconceivable. It's
mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. I mean, it is Shakespeare repetitive. It's like Shakespeare on like...
Thank you. Steroids.
Yeah. And I don't get it. I mean, it's interesting. So you've gone through that every time.
Every single agency. And I'm the common denominator.
I always say, don't ever make me laugh when I'm drinking because I'll give a spit take. Excuse me. But no, I hear that.
It's like, and each time it's like, why don't people like me? And it's like, well, wait a minute, Marie, what about them? The huge difference for me was recovery in the world of drug and alcohol, rehabilitation, and it's been almost 18 years. So for me, it completely changed my perspective, getting clean and sober. Because in the very beginning, I got very defensive and angry and hurt. And then as I started to understand more about human behavior in the world of recovery, I could step back and see it's not about me, it's about them. And it's about them feeling threatened by what I've accomplished, and right?
Oh, yeah. It's all about jealousy and fear.
I won't say her name, but when I was the director of Wilhelmina here in Chicago for like 20 minutes,
Yeah.
there was an employee who had come over from another network in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was the scout.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular individual was hired before I was hired. The brick and mortar was a new situation. Instead of working remotely from Starbucks, they now had a brick and mortar. They were putting their staff together. And so I came in after this particular person. And what I found fascinating is from the very first day, she was trying to get me fired. And she actually came out and said, being the director should have been her job, not my job.
That was
Which
pretty.
I found fascinating because she had never run an agency. She had never owned an agency. The only thing she had ever done is run a new faces department of scouting. So how do you leap, rhetorical, how do you leap from being a scout to thinking you're actually going to run the whole agency?
It's called delusion.
I know, this is my point. And so, well, the irony in this whole equation is that she managed to get me fired.
Mm-hmm.
But then I actually helped that along the way because I wasn't putting up with this person verbally abusing the models and calling them fat and grabbing their butts and saying that the butt had to be jiggled to see which was fat and which was muscle.
Oh my God, I just want to.
Yeah. So I got HR involved, the vice president involved, the CEO involved, in-house counsel involved. And essentially I was told, shut up.
Yeah.
Focus on sales.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You speak of HR and you talk about, I mean, isn't that what HR is for? Is speaking of protection, and
yes,
and when you do that, you're the one that gets cut.
Yes,
I've seen that a lot.
Yep. So it's like, just shut up, stay in line, do exactly what you're told to do. Don't worry about the models, their tears, their self-esteem, their potential for suicide because somebody grabbed their ass and was jiggling it, telling them they were less than just because they didn't meet that particular scout standard.
Yeah.
Why did you sign the girl if she didn't meet your criteria?
So let me ask you something. If you had taken the road of not speaking up in any of these ways, shape, or forms, in any of these environments, how do you think you would feel today?
Forget about it. I'd be in prison for murder. Because I wouldn't have been able to contain myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't just sit and witness or sit and hear and not feel any kind of accountability for advocating for these individuals or anybody. And regardless of not even being models, as we've discussed before, it's creatives in general.
Yeah.
It's not just creatives, we hear about the gymnasts and, Sandusky with the football team and, so it's like anywhere there's power, it goes back to what we were saying before. Anywhere there's power, you have vulnerability. And for me as an agent or advocate, activist, whatever you want to call me, if I can do anything to prevent trauma of any kind, and most importantly then as the consequence, prevent suicide. I just had one of my martial arts friends 3 weeks ago kill himself. That's the 25th friend.
Jesus, Marie.
And I used to represent him at ARIA.
Oh, Jesus.
It's
So
like,
so let me ask you this. If you were to look at all 25 of these individuals, whether you have or you haven't,
mhm.
what's the common denominator there?
Well, me.
Yes, there's that. There's that. But
Let me
taking
see.
yourself out of it, I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about their character because this has nothing to do with you. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I was just trying to make light of a very sad
I know
conversation.
you were, and it is very, very sad and heartbreaking. So,
Interestingly enough, I would say that the dominating thread, not in his situation, but the dominating thread was drug and alcohol abuse, which is the Band-Aid to whatever trauma was sustained, right?
right.
So it's not really the drugs and the alcohol, but the drugs and the alcohol exacerbate the problem. Everybody thinks that that's the solution, but it's just a Band-Aid, and it's actually just creates more mental health issues. But I think in his particular situation, and I don't know about the autopsy yet, but in his situation, it was speculated that he sustained too much trauma to his head. And just like in the football world, how they sustain, those concussions and then eventually effects, right? But definitely drugs and alcohol was the common denominator. And the bulk of, I would say all but 4 were in the modeling business.
So see, that is something that I was never aware of in the modeling industry, that there is a high level of suicide. Because when you said it earlier in the conversation, that is, what basically your purpose. I'm not trying to put words in.
Why? Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, okay, well, is this a general statement? And now we come back and you're telling me that, most all of them came from the modeling agency world. I had no idea. And were they in front of the camera? All these individuals?
All but a few, like makeup artist, hairdresser, photographer, but the bulk of them were models.
So at the time,
just recently, July was one. He looked like a baby, a mini me Aquaman. What's
wow, Jason Momoa.
Yes.
Wow.
You look at this literal Greek god and you're like, what could possibly be bad in that man's life? Highly intelligent, infectious personality, absolutely gorgeous, bodybuilder, model. And I know it's very deceiving. I understand that intellectually, that the aesthetic is truly irrelevant.
It is.
Like you were saying, talking about, people being at home and what kind of pain are they in. Yeah. And ironically, even with all this discussion about mental health in the media, in the mass media and social media, we still have this going on. People still feel isolated.
It's rampant. It's rampant because let's face it. I mean, this is not something, even since you and I spoke, Astroworld down in Houston.
Yeah.
My husband was there filming it. Was in the middle of all of it. Every last bit of it. I know he's a changed man.
Wow.
And I can't imagine, getting back to mental health. Mm-hmm. We both know that unless you're raised in a household, let's face it, you can be raised in a household of intellects. First off, it's like, I don't know, every podcast I've had, people are like, well, you came from such a great, like this and that. And I'm like, wow, what kind of storytelling do I tell? Because it's like everybody thinks I have this like, Camelot existence. And I'm like, did you miss the part where the band? Like, or am I leaving that out? Because I feel like I pretty much bring that up in chapter 1. And what I thank my parents for, amongst all the dysfunction, when I say all the dysfunction, no, thank God we didn't have alcoholism and drugs, but there was violence, there was anger issues, and there was physical violence. And I only remember a little of it, but I'm sure I saw it at such a young age, which is why I started going into the kitchen in the middle of the night at 3 years of age and start feeding myself, because I couldn't nurture little Felicia enough, because I couldn't help my mother, or I couldn't help my father. I couldn't help them. I was helpless. So how else could I do this? So, that was my drug and alcohol, so to speak. I mean, I hate to, do you think I like to label myself as an addict? Oh God, no, I will run far, far, far away from it. But, the point is that mental health and psychology and therapy was never something that was shunned in my family. On the contrary, my parents were in marital therapy in the 60s. Like, I don't know anybody else who was, but my parents made it okay to be in therapy. No different than going to the dentist or going to the pediatrician. Wow. That's what you did. And though we didn't do it right after my father died, we did it within the couple of years, once we all kind of came out of the dark cloud and all saw a therapist, not even together, but individually saw the same therapist. And I find that coming forward with the pandemic and making it, this forefront conversation, and social media, and particular actors talking about the online services and all the easily access and so forth. And I don't know what the affordability aspect of is on all those levels, but I can tell you that even if people get to the point where they're ready and willing to open that door, I don't even know if it's affordable for them, because that's a big reality for many people. And, to do it consistently, and to get to a place. And then as I say to people, and I've always said this to people, you can't just go and show up to one therapist's door and think that that's going to be the right fit for you.
I know, right?
Yeah. And people are like, seriously, man, like, I need help. And now I'm going to have to interview. And I'm like, actually, you have to interview about 5 or 6 people before you find the right person. And they're just like in overwhelm. They're already in overwhelm, and now they're in quadruple overwhelm. And then I'll share the story. Imagine this. Imagine being a female all by yourself, who's just been going through domestic violence, and has now had to, gone through pregnancies and all these things, and you're all by yourself, and you create, you feel responsible for creating this whole scenario. And now you have to find a therapist, because not because you think you're sick, but because the environment you surrounded yourself is sick, and you need to be heard and walk through this. 5 out of 6 therapists I interviewed, I could have fucking been their therapist.
Wow, that's sad, isn't it? Yeah.
It's extremely sad. And I'll never forget the therapist we had for post my father's death, and him saying that most therapists never should either be therapists or need to be in therapy. Now, I'd like to take a very human side to that and say, well, every doctor still needs their own doctors, or every lawyer still needs their own lawyer, or every teacher still needs their own teacher. But then you go, yeah, okay, well, maybe it's because of all the things that they hear or whatever. No, he was really literally saying, like, no, they're probably pretty screwed up. And, like, that's how I heard it.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very like, hey man, just because you got PhD or doctor or psychology does not mean that you're going to be like the right fit. And that is not to make it bad about therapists, by the way. I want people to be aware of why I take this, feel this is the approach. And then not every kind of approach and practice is the right practice. Do you want to be in the chair for 10 years? I certainly hope not. I certainly hope your goal is to go get the tools and to get the fuck out and to apply it. Now, does that not mean that you still don't need a coach or refinement throughout? Of course, we all do. But getting back to, again, the present day and COVID and all, I still think that people have a very negative connotation when it comes to therapy and getting help or having a source to talk to that's a healthy source. That's a source that, whether it's your rabbi or your priest or whatever, but there's got to be a really healthy person qualified to do that. A really good life. I don't even mean life coach, because sorry, that's a runaway train too for me. Like a lot of people just shouldn't be given that title and certification. Now, you can all come back and attack me all you want, but that's just the way I feel. Because I still think people lack perspective to be able to actually help people.
Absolutely. If you're not qualified. But these days, all you have to do is put together an Instagram profile and you're now a life coach, you're a therapist,
Shocking.
Yeah.
So shocking. I mean, that's part of it. I remember somebody about a year ago saying, oh, you should. And I went, oh, hell no. No. No, that is not what I am wrapping my brain around. No. I mean, I'm either going to go for my doctorate, which I'm not going to do, or I'm going to find another platform that I can be myself, share my story, and listen to other people and try to help people through that. And that's how this evolved.
Awesome.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just going to say, on a positive note, how my cynicism turned into a blessing. There's this organization called Resilience, and it was referred to me by somebody in the world of recovery. And so, I looked into, one of their therapists, based upon geography and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she was, I think I would speculate, I didn't ask her, but I would speculate she was somewhere in her late 20s, early 30s. And I went into the appointment because you could see her photograph on the website. So I went into the appointment thinking, okay, I promised my friend in recovery I would go interview this therapist. And I was thinking, how in the hell can somebody late 20s, early 30s have any idea how to handle a senior citizen with severe trauma experiences in life? And I told her when I sat down, I said, with all due respect, you look like you just essentially graduated high school, and it's very hard for me to take you seriously. Because I can't even imagine you would know what I've been through or could help guide me, because I've been in therapy since I was 10 years old in some form. And she was very sweet. She didn't get defensive. She just said, how about if we just speak for this hour? And at the end of the hour, if you still feel that way, then clearly it's not a fit and I can recommend somebody else in the organization. I said, fair enough. So at the end of the hour, she's, how do you feel? I said, I think we should move forward. So all through COVID, we were doing Zoom chats, or they called it something else. It wasn't Zoom, it was something through the therapy that's ultra private, but program. But anyway, the point is that it was very delightful to find a human being and that was me being judgmental about her age, thinking there's no way somebody so young could get it. And she actually not only got it, but really shared a lot of super important information. So in that situation, I have a positive story to respond, but I would say 98% of the shrinks I've spoken to were idiots.
Well, and this is the thing. Look at that. I know some really brilliant therapists who have helped a lot of people. I mean, they're friends of mine, and I know that they do tremendous work. So this is not the anti-therapy. No, this is the combination of, no, there's a lot of people who they just need a third party.
Yeah.
To bounce things off of and to be heard in a way that's going to be neutral and helpful. And a lot of people just don't have that. They don't have that in their partnerships. They don't have that in their family structure. They certainly don't have that in their professional life. Mm-hmm. So where do you turn? And that's why this professional venue is important. And yeah, no, sadly, I'm sure there are a lot of people like there aren't great agents, there aren't great makeup artists, there aren't great photographers, but yet some of them just fly like right to the top.
Yeah.
You and I have seen them left and right, and you just can go, I don't get it. What am I not seeing? Or am I just being the asshole? And then you're like, no. And in a situation with therapy, and I don't think age is the thing, but I do understand why you would have the like, hey, I don't know how this is going to be. But let's face it, you and I at age 20 probably would have made great therapists because of the perspective we were bringing to people at that point. So I think that's the relatableness of, because I certainly think I made great impacts between the ages of 18 and 23 on a lot of young people that still carries forward because of my life experiences that I brought to the table prior. So I think that's amazing that you found that. And I'm curious because this brings me to Boss Babe Models. Okay. Like, how did Boss Babe Models come out of all the things that led up to that?
Well, the quick version was after being fired from Wilhelmina, I think in defense of them, they had me 5 months. It wasn't literally 20 minutes.
It wasn't 20 minutes.
So after I was fired from Wilhelmina, hoping that Wilhelmina was going to be a different experience, which was delusional, but I was still hoping for it, based upon the sales pitch that I got from the CEO. I started in the meeting with the then CEO. I started in the meeting saying, because he said, why do you want to work for Wilhelmina? And I said, well, I'll just start with your corporate statement that you have on your website talking about the importance, how the models come first. And most agencies don't have that philosophy. Mm-hmm. And he kind of looked at me, and I think that should have been a red flag to me. I don't even know if he had read the website. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So because I quickly came to learn that was not their philosophy, as you know, and why I would eventually get fired. But it was then being fired and just being so brokenhearted by being like, how do I explain this? I don't want to sound like a martyr, but being one of only a few people in the business who were willing to step up and to speak their truth and to accept the consequences that came with speaking their truth. Because with Boss Babe Models, I'm a sole owner, and I don't have to worry about being muzzled by business partners, which I've experienced in the past, mm-hmm. not wanting to be so vocal with the truth. Mm-hmm. And so I finally had thought, I'm going to be for whatever it's worth, I'm going to put this in God's hands, and Boss Babe Models is going to be essentially a coaching company, mm-hmm. in which I'm like a vending machine. You just walk up, you stick money in the little meter.
Yeah.
And out comes information. And that information is legit based upon 40 years of being in the business. And also I take great pride in making sure that I'm up with social media. I'm up with what's happening in the global modeling industry. Like, I really make a point to stay current and relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can pass on all that awesome sauce to each of my coaching clients. I do manage a tiny little group of people. I have 10 that are not clients that pay me. They're models that I manage, and then I get a commission from the agencies that I then place them with. So I call myself a model manager.
Yeah.
As well as a model advocate.
Yeah. And how long ago did you conceive?
4 years ago.
And how, because that you are definitely an enigma unto yourself from a coaching perspective. I mean, nobody thinks about, oh, let me go get coached, either before or while or during I'm actually having this career or building this career.
Yeah, I don't think most people truly understand the magnitude of pursuing a modeling career at this stage of the game and how to elevate themselves into a global brand. I really don't think that they do. They are deceived into thinking, not intentionally by the agencies, but they're deceived by the media and thinking that the agencies are the ones that are going to make them the superstars. And what they don't understand for the most part is agencies in this era don't have time making a general statement, because there are some awesome agencies and they do what we're talking about, where they are the ones where the heavy lifting leans on their shoulders. But I would say 90% of the agencies out there are relying on the models to develop themselves, to get their own testing, to edit that film, to send it to them, to find their own coaching, like acting coaching, runway coaching. You know what I mean? Like, it's a craft and they have to learn their craft, and they think, oh, well, I'm pretty, I'm 5'10", now I'm going to be on the cover of Vogue. It's like, no, you actually have to work for it. And you have to do things like be active on social media, and hopefully not being raunchy about it, and hopefully like maintaining a certain sense of dignity. And that's all the kind of stuff that I talk about in coaching, for them not to fall victim to the great American brainwash of, if they're not sticking their boobs out or their butts out at the camera, then they're not valid. They're not valid models.
I have to say, though, that, I mean, this is just my perspective, that's always been the way. But I mean, I never looked to you guys to get me my jobs. I always had to be the one to ultimately be the advocate. I mean, you left the most lingering positive effect, besides probably Lee at David and Lee or something. But you really were the thing. You really were the person in that world. Because, I came to realize very early on that it was totally up to me to make my career, that it was totally up to me to get my jobs. It was totally up to me to create repeat customers, clients. If my money exchange was going through an agency, that I knew that so much percentage would come out and so much wait time would occur. And I knew I didn't really love that. I knew that I needed to have more control as a business person. For me, personally, I knew that that's why when independent films started coming along, I was really like, oh, now we're talking. I'm getting, did I want to be an employee? No, but I appreciated having been a startup businesswoman, so to speak, which is really rough saying that when I was making nominal money at the time. But you know, where at least I was getting, I was seeing the fruits of my labor, my taxes were being taken care of, and it was coming every week. And you know, I think that I don't understand how people think that things are handed to them.
You know, what's interesting is I was listening to you speaking and I was thinking about so many of the artists or creatives, whether it be photographers, hairdressers, makeup artists, stylists, that I've either coached or managed or represented. It's ironic that the creatives, meaning the support,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, understand that. But the models don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, like, how do they? I mean, this is rhetorical, but it's like,
no, it's not.
How do they not get that they have to be on the grind, right? They have to be accountable. It's a business, right? They need to learn their craft. It's not just about standing there and looking pretty and having everybody do the job for them.
You know, you're talking about an animal and a category no different than a lot of the talent in front of the camera and motion picture. And we can both love and adore them. But you're talking a very similar kind of conversation. And the coddling does take course. When, you know, and when I use this phraseology, I mean this in the most loving way. When you put Humpty Dumpty back up on the wall, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, even though I'm sure some will take it as such. It's not meant to be. But when you put together that whole package, and you're the canvas, and everybody else has put their flavor in you. I mean, and you're the one that's put in the spotlight. something somewhere has been messaged to you that you don't have to, because everybody else is going to, and I just have to be here and just do my part. So stand on that line, deliver my line, stand on that spot, you know, look this way. I don't understand the science of the mind when it comes to that. I really, really don't. I don't know where that message, I got to this point where, after coming from Chicago and being here in LA and having so many people in my chair going, how did they decide that they were the one to be in front of the camera? What message did they get that they were going to go for this? You know, and that they, you know, because what was the difference between them versus not me, but them versus me? And I used to think, is there some sort of planet up there where they all speak the same language? And they like talk to one another, and then they come down here, and there's a certain kind of size of their head. Their cranium is a little larger. Their bodies are a little bit smaller, and they all photograph really well on film and camera. And they all kind of just show up, and that's what they are. And they kind of all run together. And I was like, is there some...
You saw that thread of commonality, huh?
Yeah, that's my point. That's my very organic observation. But there is a thread. There is a common something. And, you know, so in your coaching, have you found it to be fulfilling for you?
Oh my gosh, yes. Because, you know, it's no different than when you and I would chat back, you know, decades ago.
You're doing
the same person.
Yes.
I'm just more educated and much more experienced. Yeah. And more, and I have more empathy. I have more compassion. And so for me, coaching, whether I'm being paid my hourly rate of $250 by my coaching client, or I'm coaching the model that I manage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't discern the difference between the two. It's
Mm-hmm.
just two different business arrangements. I still give not even 100%, 1,000% of whatever is necessary in that conversation.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
help empower them.
Yeah. Well, anybody who would get you as a coach or see the value of being taught by you, in my eyes, is doing the smartest thing for themselves to enlighten themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Too. And that's not ego talking. That's
Mm.
experience talking.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm stunned by, what I see on social media every day, are these individuals that have never worked in an agency telling people how to become models. And I listen to a lot of the video content because I'm thinking, you know, maybe I can learn something, just like with that young therapist, like, you know,
Right.
keep your mind open. You just might learn something. So I watch these people talking. It's like, what are you talking about? That's not how it works. And I don't know. I don't want to go off into a tangent, but I'm just saying it's frustrating watching people becoming very financially successful through social media, selling information that is inaccurate.
Well, I mean, have you ever gone on Clubhouse?
People were inviting me all over the place to do that. And I was like, no, I can't handle another platform.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating. Just look at, there's been a lot of wheeling and dealing there. And I'm not saying that's not valid, but I think it's very interesting, like listening to people pump up their egos and stroke each other. And it's just another way of drawing attention to oneself. And I've been a fly on the wall in a lot of these rooms, listening to these people going, wow. I mean, I don't want to be judging. I'm just like going, who are these people, and what makes them think that they're all that in a slice of bread? I don't know. Maybe they are. But I realize that at the end of the day, when this is all done and over, is any of this going to matter?
Well, hopefully, just like what we've been talking about, that goes back to why. And
Correct.
for me, if I can prevent trauma, if I can prevent suicide, then at least as long as the person is alive, they'll know that I mattered to them, and that I helped them through some kind of a crisis, or I prevented a crisis. But yeah, I have to keep it in perspective too. Like, I'm going to die. Everybody dies. And so before I die, though, what kind of legacy am I going to leave behind?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because when you and I were first, you getting into it before I did, and then getting into it, and now with social media, and seeing those who can create these phenomenal presence. I mean, I saw people come up in my department, my categories, like everybody's a makeup artist, or everybody's a hairdresser, and everybody. And the irony is, in my realm, not my realm, but the realm I work in, we can't put out what we're doing. We can't do that because we're signing NDAs. We can't. We have privacy protection that clauses that we would be completely failing on, and a great way to get fired. And you see all these influencers, who to me aren't actually really truly professional artists. Mm-hmm. They couldn't go on a set and solve a bunch of problems.
Right. Yeah.
Being a real professional artist means that you can really solve problems.
Yeah.
Not just do one kind of look. And my question to you is the difference today in, when you were coming up and discovering people like Cindy Crawford, and where there was certain agencies and there was the magazine world of fashion editorial, and then how it did break out into the realm of entertainment and how that blended together through the movement of the MTV and the music video world and all that kind of stuff that kind of started marrying one another. And today it's a runaway train. Like today, I mean, like, how does an agency even hold a candle to anything? Because people can just get, you know, product placement with anything, and they can be, I mean, I've seen people on social media who I'm like, there's no way in hell that you would ever be considered an agency individual. No way. But yet there they are, supposedly because of global marketing and just how they market themselves. They've got all this free product and God knows how much sponsorship, and they're their own individual, and I don't know whether they are or they aren't represented by whom or who that is valid. Mm-hmm. What is your commentary on that?
Well, you just brought up 100 things I could have gone off on. Can you
go?
Press play. I'm super melancholy. Are you familiar with the therapy called dialectic therapy, where there's a belief system and that is that you can feel two different emotions at the same time. And like you can be angry with somebody and still love them, kind of thing.
You know, there was a title to that. I experience that emotion a lot, or emotion.
I went, I don't know if I told you this. I've got such a bad memory in this older era. But anyway, I had never been in any kind of drug or alcohol therapy. Did we talk about this, where I put myself into this very bougie recovery center in the suburbs of Chicago that specializes in eating disorders?
I don't remember.
So anyway, it was like right out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Really?
Yeah. Which I won't even go into, but it is relevant to this conversation, where
it sounds destructive versus.
Yeah, I lasted 4 days and was essentially going to call the police if they would not let me go, because it was a really bad situation. But how it becomes relevant to this topic is not only finding out about what a shit show the world of recovery facilities can be, but also getting in there. And the one positive thing that I had in those 4 traumatic days was learning about dialectic.
Thank God you came out with something golden.
Dialectic behavior. And it's really quite fascinating, because if you can imagine like 2 porpoise swimming next to each other, you have these 2 simultaneous emotions. And how this becomes relevant to your conversation about the business. When I started in the business as a client, I remember the significance of work commitment and passion as an agent by Jane Stewart and David and Lee.
Yeah.
Those were the 2 agents that as a client, I knew really took their career very seriously, and no matter what hour, and we didn't even have beepers yet.
No.
Right?
No.
We haven't even had this thing called an answering machine.
No.
So anyway, the point is that you could call them at the agency after hours because there's an emergency over a booking for the next day, and they'd be there.
Yeah.
Or if you would ask them, you know, what's up with Sarah, they would know what's up with Sarah.
Yeah.
So and that was just as a client. And then becoming an agent, I got to learn the true commitment of being an agent and how to manage them, because I was a client, because I had been a model, because I had been taught to be a photographer by Stan. Like, I had such an incredible education, and not to mention, you know, working with Valentino and his atelier in Rome, right? Or going to New York and shooting with Vogue, shooting the cover of a magazine. Like, I had this insane experience. Then when we became elite, This is how the dialectic experience comes in.
Mm-hmm.
When we became elite, I felt like I was in Camelot because I was drinking that Kool-Aid. I had been a client booking all those amazing girls through Elite for Stan. And so for us to become elite, I thought that it was just the most euphoric experience that I could have working for that brand.
Yeah.
Because it was truly elite.
You had hit the pinnacle. Yeah.
And to learn about the sexual predators within the company. So that's where the dialectic experience comes from, having such immense pride, being an employee of the elite system, and then having such heartbreak, finding that the owners were sexual predators. So that was a painful yet very important awareness for me, and to understand how I could do better as an agent. And yet at the same time, with all that, there was constant conversation about the model and her mental health. And, do we send her to Paris? Do we send her to Milan? Do we send her to like Los Angeles back in those days, which really didn't have much to talk about in the world of fashion, but she had a brother out there and she could live rent free. You know what I mean? Like you managed your models.
Right.
Now, in this era, it's quite contrary relative to the agencies. Again, complicated conversation, not bashing agencies. The bulk of agencies see models as little pieces of fast fashion. It's, they're going to be out next week. We don't need to worry about them. There's no true concern because they know there's such an abundance of people that will just replace them and they'll do anything. These are desperate people so wanting to be on the cover of that Vogue magazine because there's so little left of the industry to be a part of.
Yeah.
And what you have, do you remember back in the day in Chicago, we had sick money. It was so abundant between Evans Furs, Carson's, Cranston, Nobart, Sears. I mean, the list goes on and on. We had such an abundance of great clients.
Yeah.
And now, I remember back in the day, if you mentioned working in Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
The girls in New York would be like, I don't do Milwaukee. Right.
Yeah, Milwaukee.
And now the New York agents are fighting over that Kohl's client because there's very few clients left that are spending any money.
Yeah.
So what we have is an industry where the CEOs and the CFOs and the directors and managers of the agencies are essentially pressing heavily on the agents to make bookings. So the priority of the company, if we go back to why, the priority of the company isn't necessarily literally model management.
Mm-hmm.
The objective is to make money. Mm-hmm. So the true health, physical health and mental health of the agency business has kind of gone out of the window, and they're in defense of them. They just don't have time to be developing the models and managing the models like we used to do back in the 80s and the 90s, because there's not enough clients left and everybody is grasping like desperate agents trying to get whatever clients that they can, whatever bookings that they can.
Well, it's interesting because in your talking and you're sharing that, I see how that shifted. Even being on a very, not even being integrated with that, but seeing how it shifted also in the film world, doing the very same thing where, money and turnover and being replaceable and all those things, and just how many things can we produce and how hard can we work this crew and how hard and how fast and so forth. which is why, I mean, this weekend, ironically, there's a vote out for whether we'll strike or not.
Yeah.
People, it's already been ratified. It's not been ratified. It's just we voted to authorize for a strike, and then that's when they came back to the table. And now we're actually finally got the paperwork. But the point is that, it comes back in my book to moral compass, integrity, truth. I think we've all had these pinnacle moments of like rising to these top of the mountain, or being a part of that, circling on that, and being a part of all of that should be that we like go, oh, this is everything we like work so hard for. And then no sooner the curtain gets pulled back and you're like, wait a minute, this is what it's about.
Right.
I didn't know I was signing up to, as I put it. And it's interesting because I was saying this 20 years ago, and I talk about being an anomaly, and it's only now more recent during this whole upheaval of what we're seeing in the world of people in the work world, that in certainly in the film industry, would you have said, oh, Cindy Crawford's replaceable? No, Cindy Crawford's only one. There's only one Cindy Crawford.
Right.
There was one Christy Turlington.
Right.
There was only one, and continue on that line of that group of women. That's why they were who they were. And I do ironically feel like in the modeling world, there is more milquetoast than ever. There is no standout. I mean, yeah, you can have your Gigi Hadid or whatever, but I mean, come on, like that. I mean, does it matter? I think she doesn't matter. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that she'll be fine no matter what.
Yeah.
She'll be fine no matter what. She's a different, but now it's also changed where it's not a little girl from a Iowa farm.
Right. Yeah.
Who gets in the door.
Well, look at Jenner. Look at Kendall Jenner.
Hello. I was just going to say, it's the daughter of the person who did this either outrageous thing, whether it was, and I don't know that whole, thing about whether it was a porn movie or if it was just masterminding marketing, or I don't know. I don't really care, but there's obviously generations of history that are now opening the doors to those kids.
Yeah.
And giving them these opportunities. And ironically, it's either working for them or it's not. You can look at the Jenners, but then you can look at like the, I shouldn't even use these names, but the Lisa Rinnas and the Hamlin kind of like, who think that their daughters should be, and no sooner turning around and accidentally overdosing, was it? Yeah. I've seen a lot of stuff from these children, and I see who they came from, and sadly, they'd throw anybody under the bus to rise to the occasion, even their own child, I'm afraid. And I don't need a lawsuit. I'm just saying that my point is that people will do whatever they want to get ahead at the cost of anything and everything and anyone. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, not so kosher.
Yeah. Back to Shakespeare.
And it always will come back to Shakespeare, so to speak, that, you may think breaking my heart today is going to benefit you, but at the end of the day, it's your karma and your destiny that's going to determine. And I don't care what show you're on or what project you're doing or what you think your name is or who you think you are. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, dust to dust, like you're still going out the same way everybody else is.
Yeah.
You're not a good person, that's still going to show up being that you weren't a good person. And it is interesting how this, this market has, and how all these markets have changed. As I was about to say, when I got into the business, I didn't get into business to, again, not a disrespectful statement, to become what was considered to be a blue collar worker. That was not something that I knew. Like, I thought I was going to become a visual storyteller and make an impact and be an artist and a businesswoman. I did not know that I was going to be working for people who may not know or have as much experience or have any care for the product or the people that are helping create the product. And I didn't know that there was this industry and this systematic industry that was a two-class system. And that in the United States of America, basically, if you're in a certain union, that basically you can only work within a certain realm of the United States versus the rest of the country. So as if it's like there's Poland, that's New York, and Russia, that's, New Orleans, and Chicago is Australia. And I mean, I say that in a very random sort of way, but it's the truth. Like, unions have given away, like when I came to LA had all the United States except the 13 eastern bordered states and the 100-mile radius around Chicago. And now LA only has LA in my realm, in the union that I work amongst. So it's just interesting how all these things, how we started out this conversation regarding, like, getting your black belt and standing up for yourself,
right,
being the truth, and having moral compass, and being a person who sees, and pulling things behind the curtain. And how do you travel this journey while still being able to, sleep at night, basically, and yet also take care of yourself, mentally, physically, economically, while not selling your soul.
Yeah, a lot of challenges there. I wanted to let you know, I was totally paying attention to you. I was just realizing I'm shivering. And I'm like, so I kept turning up the heater, the little space heater, because I'm in like this storage room at the gym.
Oh, honey.
Yeah. And so I was like, why am I so bloody cold? I keep turning up the heater. And then I realized it had been unplugged.
Oh, sweetie, are you okay?
I'm okay. Well, it'll get warm soon. But I didn't want you to think I was totally focused, but I was like, I needed to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Because it's cold in Chicago, just so you know.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're now in winter.
I've seen the news. Well, we're experiencing 90-degree heat.
Whatever. Thanks.
I know. No, I don't say that as a LA girl. I know. I remember those days when I first came here, and I was like, "Don't talk about the weather because somebody might show up at your front door and go, listen, no, it's extreme. I mean, it is extreme right now. I would not expect it. I see what's going on in the country, and I'm sorry that it's getting cold. And I know that everybody would give their eye teeth to be here for that sake. But I just think that there's no sound answer other than being the best person you can be.
Yeah.
And I think that it really comes down to character of the human being. Because I think some people's character will never be fazed by anything we've spoken of.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not going to engage in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not affected by it one iota. And I'm not really sure why it is that there's that kind of a character versus our kind of a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish to God that I could sometimes turn this off. But I know that in doing that, I would no longer be, my heart would no longer be pumping.
Yeah.
So I would rather be myself and you.
Mm-hmm.
And know that at the end of the day, at the core, who we are and who we represent are people that I would trust, seek, want in my inner circle, and want to be rising up with. Because we both know that we know what hurt is, know what harm is, we know what grace is, we know what success is.
Yeah.
We know what doing things right and consciously is and are. And that there is a right way to do things with ethics and integrity.
Absolutely. I agree.
And so our whys are to be a purpose and to change people's lives for the better. And I certainly have always felt that way. I didn't need a guru coach from business world to tell me that. I think we both have been consciously, unconsciously walking that walk all along. Yeah. Somebody else, many others, by the way, have culminated on that phraseology. You and I just show up and are. Yeah. And I don't say that with an ego. Right. I say that it's the truth, knowing each other as we know each other.
Well, for me, the more a power, and whatever that means, more power I acquire with resources and information, it's no fun if I can't share it.
That's right.
And so a lot of people kind of bark at me like, why would you tell that your competitive agency about that? And it's like, that client, it's like, because I should. I think the world is abundant, and, I'm not going to, give them my model's home phone numbers, but, I'm not going to just sabotage my company. But I think, doing kind things does go a long way. And I'll give you an example. This is just more about humane. And I was so shocked. So here at Chicago Fitness Center, where I've been trying to help them through marketing, social media, whatever, they need a reupholsterer for a lot of the equipment. There's 40,000 square feet of equipment. So that's a lot of machines that need to be reupholstered. And it's been around for 40 years. So anyway, the point is that I was doing an internet search, like, what the hell do I do? Chicago upholstered gym equipment. Like, this isn't my world. So one of the personal trainers said, what are you doing? Why don't you just call, oh crap, I can't believe I just forgot the name, Quads. Why don't you just call Quads Gym? I'm like, Quads, they're our competitor. He goes, well, what's the harm in just asking the owner if he had a referral?
Right.
I was like, oh. So I called like this owner who doesn't know anything about me, but he certainly knows that we're a competitor in town. And I told him what I was looking for, and he said, oh, sure, I've got the guy's number right here. Let me give it to you. I about fell off my chair.
See,
and I even wrote him a thank you note.
Yeah.
A handwritten, not an email.
No, here's the thing. See, that to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I think of Chicago. And it's an interesting thing because being out here, as long as I have, one of the running, not jokes, but when you find out somebody else is from the Midwest, and I know you're from Florida originally, but you've been in the Midwest long enough, you're a Midwesterner.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? That, and maybe we've talked about this the last time, but there is something to be said about, and I know this is a very general statement, there's something to be said about coming from that kind of homegrown, very Midwest quality. Like, you don't have to have the same education, you don't have to have the same religion, you don't have to run in the same socioeconomics, but there's just this kind of kindness. And it's funny because I was going to write on kindnesses today, because really at the end of the day, man, that's all that really matters. Are you kind to somebody? Like, I don't care how much you're worth. I don't care who got you that Porsche. I don't care like what you're doing today and who you're doing it with. Are you kind?
Yeah.
Did you do something kind for somebody? And I reflect a lot on aging, not because of aging, but because of having taken care of my mom and having been around a group of people who were really elegant people, but they all had their stories and they all came from accomplishment. But at the end of the day, this is where they ended up, like aging and needing support and just people being kind to them. As they were hopefully most likely to people as they were going through life. And I thought, because that at the end of the day is all that matters. That's all we've got.
Right.
Were you graceful with one another? What did you bring to the table that made somebody, that left them feeling better?
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, I think for me personally, at the core of who you represent for me is you always did that for me. And I hope I always did that for you.
Always, sure.
And I hope that what we represent going forward is making a difference. Is that, you know, that the payoff for all the heartache or the harm or the trauma is that our legacies is that we made a difference, that we did inspire others to stand up, that we did inspire others to say, you know, whether this is okay or this isn't okay because of, and that our empathy and our perspective really mattered, and that didn't put us outside of the realm of the core. Rather, we were the eye of the hurricane in a positive way, and that the storm was for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Can I tell you, I did have a really amazing life coach. Can I tell you a story? It's going to take about 4 minutes.
Please.
My life changed with this conversation that I had. His name is Austin Vickers. And he started coaching me when I was living in Los Angeles. So that must've been about 2003 or 4. And he lived in Tempe at the time. And anyway, he was very much into quantum physics.
Yeah.
With the exception of watching The Secret, I didn't know what quantum physics was. So, you know, so thus began the coaching experience with Marie and Austin. And before I moved to before I moved to Arizona, to Scottsdale, we had to do everything over the telephone. You know, we didn't have like Zoom and Skype and all that kind of stuff just quite yet back then. So the point is that I had to do this creative visualization while we're on the telephone with my eyes closed. And this was to change my perspective on the inappropriate experiences that I had as a child. And, you know, the list is long, so it's not like one particular area. So the point was, childhood was miserable. And I would love to have those memories sucked out of my brain. And so Austin said, if you do this creative visualization exercise, I can guarantee you all of those memories will be completely changed by the time we're done with this exercise. I'm like, bring it on, bring it on. He said, okay, so it's very important where you have to pay attention and do this visually and not talk about it, but just start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do this. Okay, so he makes me create this, not a collage, what is it? A mosaic. A mosaic. Again, it's just in the brain. We're on the telephone. He said, I want you to create this mosaic for yourself. And in the mosaic, I want you to start thinking whatever resources you're going to put into the mosaic. I want you to start thinking about the variety of colors and associate color with emotion. Okay, fine. So I told him that the mosaic is done in essentially a cement form, and they're polished stones. And then we go on to talk about this one particular stone and how it was the most traumatic experience in childhood. And he said, okay, we've created the mosaic. You've got this beautiful mosaic created visually through all this trauma. Now what we're going to do, how would you feel if I told you we're going to take that one stone and we're going to bring it to a museum curator? And once you sell that stone, because he collects stones, he's in a museum, so he curates, this is a curation of memories and traumatic events. I'm like, let's bring it to the museum. Come on, let's go. So we go to the museum. I've got the stone in my hand and I'm ready to sell it. And we go into the museum curator's office and he has me put it on this beautiful burgundy velvet pillow that was sitting on his desk. And he is starting to write the check because he said, how much do you want? And I said, I want millions. He goes, okay, you have to keep in mind that as soon as we sell this, all your memories are going to be gone. I said, bring it on, start writing that check. And Austin says, okay, now we're sitting there in the office. He had to excuse himself to go take a call in another room. So before he comes back and before he puts the signature on that check, I just have one question to ask you, Marie, just one. I'm like, what? Just give me the bloody money. Let's get out of here. And he said, would you accept that check knowing that when you accepted that check, and all those memories are going to be out of your body, you're now going to give them to other children? I was like, God damn it, Austin.
Yeah.
He said, are you still going to sell that stone? Are you still going to take all those memories out of your childhood and give them to other children? I was like, damn it. I was really looking forward to that money and all those memories being gone. I said, of course not. He said, then really try to look at and embrace that trauma and understand that if you believe in deeply spiritual things, that when you were created in the universe, that you had that conversation with the universe before you even became, part of your mommy and daddy's life, that you were willing to take on all those traumas so that other children didn't have to have those traumas. Once he told me that, I was like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, but okay, I'll take it on. And that's kind of what has been the thread throughout my life as I'm sitting here talking to you about this, because I really don't tell this story often. And that is like back to the advocacy or activism or whatever you want to call it. And what I do, that I will suffer the trauma to prevent other models or other creatives from having to suffer that trauma as well. And then prevent suicide. So does that story make any sense to you?
Well, I think that in life we go back and forth in the roles of teacher and student. And I think in this, what came up for me, I'm a big believer in quantum physics. I believe that we're constantly, if we get stuck in something, then we're not being our truth and we're not being the energy form that we're here to be. Exchange. And some of us come back and forth with each other for good reasons or otherwise, but ultimately we're always having to move and go. In regards to the story and the selling of that stone, 100%, because I think for me, it's you become a shaman in the perspective, being able to share the perspective, you've now got this resource of information that you can share with others to protect them from going through these things because of your experience. So that stone now is a value that is invaluable because of what you get to carry forth with that. And therefore you get to be this incredible life teacher based upon the experiences that you carry with you. And cellularly, you can release, but in order to be the teacher that you are, the coach that you are, the perspective and the empathetic human that you are, that stone serves you and in turn serves many.
Because you look, as I was finishing the story, you look like you knew the answer. Like you knew what the question was going to be. Did you already anticipate what Austin was going to ask me, that one question? You look like you had familiarity, or what's the word? An intuition.
Well, I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that was my perspective on what you shared. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I knew the question he was going to ask or what have you, but that for me is what came for me.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if that was relative to what he was sharing with you or not, but that's what I personally would say. This is why you carry this with you. This is the value that this brings. This is how you go out into the world and spread that rock in the water, no pun intended, effect by using this stone. And then what do you do? So for me, I would say to you, okay, now you kept the stone. Now you make it the most shiny,
exactly.
Yummy, delicious, glorious stone on the planet that gets to radiate out there in the most positive way, because you're now enlightening people with this, and take it and run with it.
I was doing a speaking, what do you call it? When you go to college and you're doing something in front of the class. Anyway, I was
You're a guest speaker in a course?
No, yeah. No, I was one of the
moderator.
I was one of the students inside of University of Chicago, and it was on public speaking. So, inside of your class, you have to get up and give a speech. I can't remember, there's a term in college, but anyway, I had to give a speech. And we could talk about anything we wanted. And so I talked about that. And at the end, I had created these little packages to give all of the students. And there were these beautiful little bags. Probably, my blood sugar is low. I'm starting to get very spacey.
It's okay.
Little gift bags. Little tiny gift bags. And inside of those tiny little gift bags, I gave them a polished black stone. And that was probably 10 years ago. And I can't tell you how many of the students will come in and out of my life, whether it be social media or at an event or something. And they'll say, I still have that stone on my desk to remind me, like, whatever trauma I sustained, like there was a purpose, and I am to keep that purpose in mind in everything that I do.
I also apply that same kind of theory to, let's just take it and we'll wrap it up, but take it with, like, okay, say you've now coached a model or you've coached a client and they're hoping for this job, and for some reason they don't get that job. Then the theory in that job is it has nothing to do with maybe that they weren't talented enough or weren't attractive enough or whatever. That look at it as you were protected because you weren't supposed to be there for the reasons that may not have even unfolded yet, that may not have been presented yet. And there is something greater, different for where you're supposed to be. And it's a trained muscle.
Yeah.
And that's the thing in life is there, we can go to the gym and train our muscles, or we can train this muscle, which is the strongest muscle, Yes, of course, all the other muscles need to be trained, but this is the one, and this is the one that needs to be in sync with each other. And it really takes almost greater effort. But the more we release ourselves of that strain of what it is that we're processing, can really set us free into a whole nother realm and live a journey that really is enlightened. You know, it doesn't have to be a religion of sorts.
Right,
It can be
right.
your own journey, your path of just like being able to be free and flow. Because I know that, I mean, both of us like structure. I'm sure, but we both like structure. We both like freedom. And I'm not trying to speak for both of us, but I think I know,
Sure.
if I can speak for myself, I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for you. And, you know, we like to know what's coming, or we like to know that we're going to have and that we're going to be stable and secure. But at the same time, don't close us in.
Yeah.
Right. And so for all the things that in the past or in the present have challenged, while also all the things that have been so rewarding, you know, we have to be aware that, you know, we haven't gotten this far by accident.
Right.
That we are being guided.
I should have been dead many times.
Yeah, no, we're being guided for certain, and that we're being protected. Oh. And that it's great being us.
Absolutely.
And it's to be celebrated.
High-fiving.
I love you so much.
Ditto.
I love you so much. I wanna just, you know, wrap this up. Say that I'm so thankful for who you are, all that you do, for all the love that you have shared with so many people, the enlightenment that you bring to the table for so many. You are an angel to so many people, Marie Anderson. When God created you, or Source created you, they created a very special light. And that light, no matter how many times has been attempted to be dimmed, is way too powerful to be dimmed. That you are the only one that gets to choose when you get to turn that light off.
Right.
But your light is meant to shine for a very long time. And we're there. We're very, very thankful that you are such a bright, bright, bright light. And please, I beg of you.
Yes.
Shining.
Yes,
keep
ma'am.
being you.
Okay.
Because you're so delicious.
Well, thanks, Miss Felicia. I love you. You have a great day.
Love you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.